Hey guys, how are we doing? So today I'm going to be making a volumetric video. It's essentially a frame offset on the Z-axis and offset in time, and it creates kind of a spatial feel to the video. It's an interesting treatment that I haven't really seen, so I thought I'd share it with you guys. Just before I get into the tutorial, I'd just like to let you guys know that I do have a set of online assets that you guys can download for free. It's over on my Gumroad. At the moment, it's mostly mockups and some image textures, but I'm hoping to create some PBR materials for you guys, 3D models, and potentially even plugins in the future. At the moment, it's a bank of assets for you guys to just use and hopefully elevate the level of your work and help you guys create a more professional portfolio that you can then show to, help you guys get jobs in studios or whatever your creative work needs. So yeah, thanks for supporting, and let's get into the tutorial. We're just going to get straight into it. So I'm going to make a composition of 9020 by 9020. I'm going to make it 60 frames per second and 30-second duration should be fine. Okay, so initially what we're going to want to do is drop in our source footage. So what I've got a render of a Apple Mac Pro, just rotating with an alpha channel, and yeah, I'm going to use this as the source footage. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a quick background, and I'm going to just give this an opacity of like 10%. So we just have a subtle kind of like outline of the background, but the shape itself is very much solid. Okay, so what we can do now is we can just call this Apple render, or just give it a name. That should be fine, and we can drop that in. So if we make this 3D and then press 1, we can start to kind of rotate this and just have a bit of a look. So I'm just pressing 1 for rotate, 2 to kind of scrub, 3 to dolly zoom. Okay, so if we go and hit P, we can see our position values. So this is positioned at 0 and kind of in the center of the composition. So we want to create kind of like a volume of these duplicates that extend that way. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm just going to duplicate loads of them. So just hitting Control, Command C and then V until that looks about white, but I think about 10 should be enough, because what we're going to do is we're going to do it in factors of 1920 to get a square volume. So its width is the same as its depth. So obviously we're starting at 0, but our next one is going to be at 192, which is a 10th of 1920, and we're just gonna basically duplicate this and times it by how many we want it to be offset by. So I'm just gonna go and repeat that. So it's gonna be 192 by 3. We're just gonna repeat that until we get to 1920. Okay, so we have our volume. They are offset by 192 pixels each, and it's important that you select the first one so that when we go to offset this footage now, it's actually in the right kind of order. So if we just hit Command and then arrow key 1 to the right, we can see that we've gone in by 1 frame. If we do Alt and square bracket, that's going to cut that down. And then if we go Animation, Keyframe Assistant, and Sequence Layers, we can see that it's now been offset by 1 frame. So this is going to happen. We get this really nice look, really cool. So at this point, what we need to do is we need some sort of orientation device that can orientate all of these layers together. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go Layer, New, Null Object, and I'm going to put this into 3D orientation, and I'm going to put this at 960, which is 1920 divided by 2. So it's directly in the center of the composition and the volume. So this is going to be orientation, and then we're just going to duplicate this, and we're going to rename this to rotation. Okay, so we can get all of our footage here, and then we can pick whip that to our orientation, and then our orientation can be pick whip to our rotation. Okay, so now I'm going to add a camera. So Layer, New, Camera, just click OK. Now we're back to kind of facing the footage. So in our orientation, so I'm just going to move this back by 1920 times 1000, about 10,000, and that's going to make it really small. And then in our camera, we're going to open up our camera settings and go into zoom, and we're going to do 1920 times 10,000 here as well. So with our zoom, I'm actually going to move this back a little bit more. So I'm going to times it by, I'm just going to times this by 1.25. Okay, times it by 1.5. There we are. So we have our volume. The reason we moved it very far away and then zoomed out was to essentially increase the focal length of the camera to make it feel a little bit more orthographic. Okay, so we can now kind of orientate this in an interesting way. We're gonna go to here. This is already kind of interesting. The way of looking at this is almost like an echo effect, you could say. But what we're gonna do is we're just gonna orientate our footage in an interesting way now. So I'm gonna do minus 45 divided by 2, which is that, and then I'm going to do the same on the Z, maybe on the Y, so we get this, which is really cool. And once this is set up, it's, you know, you can essentially apply this across any footage. It doesn't have to be this source video. So I'll show a couple tests of different things that work. Usually things with a flat white background work really well, so kind of e-commerce stuff works really well for this, you know, if it's moving especially, and other things like noise work really well, but I can show some more examples near the end of the tutorial. And yeah, once this is set up, you can really explore what you'd like to do with this, and you can even actually you know, transform this over time. So we could start these at 0 and 0, and then on the last frame we could make this do 1 rotation, and we can see how that looks. And yeah, you get quite an interesting look doing this. Obviously you want to make sure that you don't overlap these too quickly or too slowly, sorry. And I think, to be honest, just using one pivot point. So if we keep these at minus 22.5 like that, and then we can just kind of animate this orientation, we get quite a nice effect. So if we put this to 259, you can see this. It's quite nice, just a very subtle movement. And you can even make it a little bit more interesting by selecting the keyframes and then go in keyframe assistant, easy ease, go into a graph editor, right click, edit speed graph, select these points and pull these in. So in that in between point, it's very quick, and we can even make this to the absolute extreme. So it looks like it doesn't move at the start, and then it very slowly builds up to a peak, and then it's back. Obviously that's quite extreme, but you know, you can really play around with that ease and get it how you want. But I think that looks pretty cool. And yeah, a bit of a quick one today, but I hope you enjoyed the tutorial and you learned a cool effect. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial.